When I was working at Barnes & Noble, when I lived in Cary, when we would close the store, it would take us about an hour to put everything back. And there was a song that our supervisor would play every night. Every single night. Every single night. And that song came to me after trying to repress it for many years. It came to me as I was reading and studying our lessons for today. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be all right. Do. Oh. Yeah, I know, I need help, okay? But it's still, it's the song by Bob Marley. And for many years, because of that time at the bookstore, I thought it was called Don't Worry About a Thing, or Every Little Thing is Gonna Be All Right, because they say it like 59 times in the song. But actually, the song is called Three Little Birds. I don't know why. Well, he saw three little birds and he wrote about it, so good for him. But what does a song about three little birds have to do with Jesus? Well, see, Jesus is trying to bring words of hope and comfort to a very scared group of people. Now, it may not look like that at first. Jesus and his disciples are in the temple in Jerusalem. The temple was the center of the Jewish world. And some of the people, including his own disciples, look up and are amazed at the temple's beauty, and it was a magnificent structure. It was huge. The outer court itself could hold 400,000 people. To the Jewish people, the temple was the perfect building for a perfect God. While the people are charmed by the temple, Jesus says it's all coming to an end. Now, Jesus came to share the gospel, which we know means what? Good news to the people. See, they remember this. But today, it's like Jesus is sharing the bad news. And this bad news is bringing back a lot of bad memories. You see, the temple had fallen before. It had been totally destroyed during the war with Babylon, which led to the Babylonian exile. The scars, the memories are still there. Now, the people Jesus is telling this to, they weren't there for the first destruction. But there is something to keep in mind when we think about our Jewish brothers and sisters. They use the we language when it comes to history. I was blessed to visit Jerusalem going 20 years ago while I was in seminary. While I was there, our group toured the Holocaust Museum. And as we were going around the museum, the tour guide would reference the people who suffered and died using the collective we. So instead of saying they lost their homes, their dignities, their lives, the host would say, we lost our homes, we lost our lives. So even though the people in our gospel were not there, they know the pain. And just mentioning the temple will fall again would touch on many sensitive issues. The people don't want to go through all that pain again. Who would? Now notice they don't ask Jesus why it will happen. They just concentrate on the when. But Jesus doesn't answer the when question, and he doesn't answer the why question. He answers the how the destruction will come about. And there are a lot of bad things that are going to happen. So what should be a moment of awe and celebration of joy, being in a beautiful building, it is a moment where the people are now very scared. They are frightened. As our lesson states, they are terrified. Now, normally in the Bible, you hear the expression, do not be afraid. But here, you get terrified. And in the Greek language, it's a different word. It doesn't mean the same thing. To be terrified means a deep fear that goes beneath the surface. So what is Jesus doing? Why is he scaring the people? First of all, I can assure you that Jesus' goal is not to scare the people. He is making them aware of what is to come. And while he is making them aware of the trials and tribulations, Jesus makes an incredible promise. Jesus will be there with the people. He will be there to give the people what they need to survive and, in a way, thrive. There is something comforting whenever we hear Jesus say, "Do not be afraid." And there is something so strong in hearing Jesus saying, "Not one hair on our heads will perish." By saying that, Jesus acknowledges the fear we have, but he also says, "I am here with you." So this is not bad news. This is good news. No matter what happens, God is not going to leave his disciples, and God is not going to leave us. Jesus is saying, every little thing is going to be all right. Because Jesus will give them the words and the wisdom so that the people can witness. I have seen this type of witness firsthand in the middle of destruction. I was on a mission trip to Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina. Mississippi is where I served my internship in Jackson. Went down to the coast, and I met people whose lives were devastated by the hurricane. And when they were telling me about their struggles, about what they lost, about who they lost, not once did they blame God. Instead, they thanked God for being with them. To them, the sign of God's presence wasn't in the storm. God's presence was in the shelter that they found, the people who gathered and helped one another, and the people who responded to the storm. This experience helped form a new faith inside of me. I saw God in a new and much better way. Those victims of the storm were witnesses giving testimony to the presence of God during a time that they were terrified. And even when they were scared, they could hear God saying, every little thing is going to be all right. And this is the faith that Jesus calls on us to have today. This faith is a gift of God, and it makes us saved and certain. We can be certain by what Jesus did for us. We can stand and endure anything that comes our way. And in the Greek language, endurance means having the capacity to hold out, the capacity to bear up in the face of difficulty. It means to have patience, fortitude, steadfastness, and persevere. That is what Jesus says and promises at the end of our gospel lesson. By your endurance, you will gain your souls. Recently, I was visiting one of our church members in the hospital, and I performed the laying on of hands rite. And as I read these words, I could hear Jesus talking to the church member, talking to me, and now to all of you. Here are the words. Living God, through the laying on of hands, grant comfort in suffering to your children. When they are afraid, give them courage. When afflicted, give them patience. When dejected, give them hope. And when alone, assure them of the support of your holy people. This goes back to the promise that God makes to us at our baptism. When we welcome you to the church family, God is saying, I am with you, my child. It is the promise that God shares with us at communion. As you are placed the sacrament in your hand, it's God saying, I am with you, and I go with you, my child. For what Jesus did for us did not bring death and destruction. It brought us life. When we take the bread and the wine, or when the children come and get their blessing, that is God sharing with us that wherever we go, whatever we go through, God is with us, bringing healing from hurt, joy from sorrow, and life from death. And what that means is that God is not a God who waits until we are hurting to come to us. God is there before, in the middle, and after. And every step of the way, God assures us that every little thing will be all right. Amen.